Hello, Giants fans, and welcome to your Monday edition of the Valentine's Views podcast here on Big Blue View Radio, part of your SB Nation family of podcasts. This is our Monday show, and your New York Giants face the Green Bay Packers on Monday night. And here to help me break the game down is Justis Mosqueda of SB Nation's Acme Packing Company. Justice, thank you for a few minutes.
Absolutely.
And Giants fans, before we get into the show too much, please remember to like, share, and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube, and subscribe across the Big Blue View Radio Network. All right, Justice, the question of the day, the thing we've got to talk about is what on God's green earth has gotten into Jordan Love?
He has been one of the hottest quarterbacks in the last 5 or so weeks in the NFL. Packers fans are very excited. I mean, the comparisons between the first half of the season statistics and the past couple weeks, um, is it all because of Jordan Love just taking this incredible step forward? It's really everything around him. The offensive line was really shaky to start the season, in terms of pass protection and stuff after probably the first 2 weeks. Um, and the wide receivers, I mean, I don't think there's been a younger group of pass catchers in NFL history than what the Packers are working with right now. So there were a lot of blown routes early on in the season, and now that everything is kind of settled down, Jordan Love has played pretty decently, and in back-to-back games against high quality competition against the Lions and the Chiefs now.
Is there something in the water in Wisconsin that just doesn't allow you guys to have bad quarterbacks? I mean, I don't know if you saw it at Big Blue View, but I stole part of the Jordan Love piece that you did the other day to use in a piece that I did about Love and perhaps the future of the quarterback position for the Giants as well. But what is there in the water from Favre to Rodgers to Love? I mean, we're talking 30 years of top tier quarterback play, and if Jordan Love keeps doing this, it might be 40. That's just not fair.
The way that they explain it, right? General Manager Brian Gutekunst was spoke about this situation before, and his whole thing is like, the worst time to draft a quarterback is when you need one, and you do whatever it takes to get that position right in the NFL. So if that means drafting Jordan Love in the first round, letting him sit for 3 years, and pissing off Aaron Rodgers at the end, the team is willing to make those sacrifices, right? If that means Aaron Rodgers' first year as a starter, you draft Brian Brom in the second round, and that second round pick never ends up becoming anything. That's just the cost of business to them, and I kind of think that that's how they sort of view that situation. The other thing too is, there were opportunities for the team to, tell Aaron Rodgers to go kick rocks, and they were going to roll with Jordan Love, right? At
Mhm.
different points, and they waited until he was ready, right? It didn't seem like Jordan Love was ready to really even become a mid-level starter, right? Until probably last training camp, and that's when everyone kind of like realized, like, okay, Love is ready, and we'll see what Rodgers does from here forward. But like, one of them is going to have to get moved the next season. I think that was part of the calculus too.
It is an interesting, old fashioned, old school NFL philosophy. And I like it. But unfortunately, the way the NFL is now, instant gratification league, so much turnover at the head coach positions and the GM positions and so much money involved in these situations.
Yeah.
Not a lot of teams are able to do that, but the Packers, you know, historic franchise, the amount of stability that they've had, and the fact that they continuously have some modicum of success. It's not a Super Bowl every year, but they're always around the playoff hunt, in the playoffs. I don't know about you, but I think that enables them to do things like that, to do the patient thing, to do the long-term thing, where a lot of franchises like the Giants who've had, you know, who've changed coaches every 2 years since Tom Coughlin left in 2015. They're on their third general manager since Coughlin left. You can't have that sort of forward thinking, and I think that that's a real benefit for the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe some of that comes back down to, the owner and stuff like that. That's something that people have brought up a lot, right? Where, we're looking at Carolina situation specifically, right? And Dave
Right.
Tepper and all the stuff that's coming out there about how he's sort of meddling with the franchise, right? And
Mhm.
Packers fans are looking at that right now and are like, thank God there isn't some billionaire running my football team that can just have his decision on like what footwork
Oh god,
means and
yes.
and matters, just watching practice and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that all comes into it. They certainly are a patient franchise. The other thing that helps too, I think, is when they drafted Love, it's not like everyone was on the hot seat, which is kind of what I think a lot of teams do. There's only 32 jobs, and people are willing to make decisions that will extend their career with a team, even if it's only by one more year. And one of those ways that you can play office politics is by handcuffing yourself to a young quarterback. So a lot of guys in the NFL, even if they don't think that they'll be able to see through the quarterback development, right? See through that whole process. Um, they'll pull the trigger on that selection just because, hey, gets me an extra year or two with this $1 million salary, and there's only 32 of these jobs in the NFL anyway. So
And it's funny that you bring that up because the Giants find themselves in that quarterback situation. Daniel Jones, really good last year, really bad this year. Only one more year of guaranteed money on that 4-year contract that the Giants signed him to. Out for the rest of the season with an ACL injury, had a second neck injury of his career that cost him time this year. The Giants are going to be in the top 10 in the draft somewhere, and they may not have a shot at Caleb Williams or Drake May, but if Jaden Daniels is QB3 or JJ McCarthy's QB3 or whoever, they might have a shot at that guy. And you're right. I've said it. Brian Daboll, Joe Shane will be back for year 3 next year. I have no doubt about that. But drafting a quarterback, which might be the right thing for them to do, just for the good of the franchise, might also be a situation that extends the rope that they get in terms of developing that guy. Because we talk about patience. One of the worst things you can do is what David Tepper and the Panthers just did,
yeah,
and what the Chicago Bears did to Justin Fields. You draft the guy, and then you fire everybody who was involved in drafting that guy, and you start over with a group that didn't draft that guy and is not invested in him. So you're right. It can lead to to a coach, sometimes to a GM, you getting extra time in the job.
yeah, and even if you get the pick right, there are things that can go wrong when you have that carousel, right? Like think about like Justin Herbert, right? Justin Herbert's an extremely talented quarterback. No one can figure out whenever, these quarterback rankings drop or anything, fans come in the mentions and are like, well, why isn't he winning more ball games? It's like because he's had a different offensive coordinator every single season. Like once you start that merry-go-round, it's hard to get that thing stopped. So if you're gonna, if you're gonna fire a guy, you better make sure it was the right decision, and that's kind of what I'm worried about in Carolina specifically because you know they had probably the most expensive coaching staff in the history of the NFL with the All Star crew that they put under Frank Reich, and they just pulled the plug after a half a season. Really,
Yeah, it's what's going on in Carolina is crazy. And in terms of Justin Herbert, I mean, Justin Herbert's head coach is Brandon Staley. So,
yeah, yeah,
you know, I think that's a big part of your answer right there. But hey, let's get back to talking about the Giants and the Packers. And I know how young the Giants roster is. I look at one of the guys that I follow on the platform formerly known as Twitter occasionally posts snap weighted age rankings. And the Giants are the second youngest team in the league based on how many snaps, these young guys are playing. The team that's the youngest is the Green Bay Packers. So aside from Jordan Love, I mean, how are the Packers doing what they're doing, with such a young roster, and who are some of these guys that have been really, home run young picks for the Packers over the last couple of years?
Yeah. So starting how they're doing it, this rookie class has really made a huge impact for Green Bay. Even if you're looking at like late round picks. I mean, Carrington Valentine is a seventh rounder who's starting at cornerback pretty consistently at this point because of the trade of Russell Douglas, because Eric Stokes has been on the injured reserve, because Jair Alexander has been hurt. So he's been in the lineup. Anthony Johnson Jr., who I believe was a seventh round pick, might have been a sixth round pick, rookie, is also starting at safety. Carl Brooks was a sixth round pick. He's probably the fourth interior defensive lineman in their 3-4 setup. And then Datavian Wicks was a fifth round pick, and he's getting he's like the fourth wide receiver in the rotation. So a lot of these late round guys who are rookies are even getting opportunities just because Green Bay really had no other choice than to go young this year. I mean, getting out of the Aaron Rodgers contract kind of put them in that position. They had to let go guys like Adrian Amos and stuff like that, just to create some cap space to be able to even push Aaron Jones's contract forward. Jones has been hurt. Bakhtiari's been hurt at left tackle. Which has created a situation where Rasheed Walker, who, second round or second year late round pick, is now starting at left tackle. So those are kind of the guys that have stepped up in a big way and have kind of impacted those numbers. As far as who are their like really good young guys, Musgrave's on IR right now because he lacerated his kidney. And then
Ouch.
yeah, that stinks. He also didn't leave the game. Finished the game, didn't realize till the night of, which definitely means he peed blood and was like, "Uh-oh, gotta go to the hospital."
Ugh.
Um, Recently, Tucker Craft, the other tight end that they drafted in the draft, has looked really good. At wide receiver, I already mentioned Wicks, but the other guy is Jaden Reed, who mostly plays in the slot, but is very good there and is um, arguably their best wide receiver right now. So those are the skill guys I would pay attention to.
Yeah, it's it's just interesting, and it points to something that I say a lot when it comes to the draft. It's not just about the first round.
No.
You you have to hit, you have to get good players in the second and third round, and if you're going to be good, long term, you have to hit on some of these day 3 guys. I will never say a day 3 guy is a bust, because that's ridiculous. I mean, people will say, "Oh, he wasn't a good player. They drafted him in the 7th round and they cut him after a year." That's a bust. That's a wasted pick. And that's nonsense, because all of those guys on day 3 are flyers. They're all flawed players, but you have to hit on some of those guys. You have to get production out of some of those guys. And the Giants have a guy named Trey Hawkins, cornerback, that they drafted in the 6th round. And I think they hoped he would be one of those kind of late round success stories. He started at corner at the beginning of the year, and it just didn't work. I mean, it may work eventually, but initially it just didn't work. So, yeah, so some of those guys that the Packers are using and getting production from are those day 3 type players, right?
Yeah, for sure, especially on the defense, right? That's where you're seeing Johnson Jr. That's where you're seeing Carrington Valentine, who I assume is going to be starting this game, because Jair has been out of the lineup for about 5 weeks with various injuries. He had a back, then he had a shoulder. Um, I don't know if he's going to be able to go in this game or not, but the cornerback opposite of him usually would be Eric Stokes, and he's still on the injured reserve. He might get called up by the time the game kicks off, but I highly doubt that they would just throw him into the fire and let him be a starter after he's basically played no defensive snaps over the last full calendar year. So Valentine's going to get the start. You guys might see a little bit of Carl Brooks. really hot, really cold. Like he's kind of um his stuff kind of comes in stretches where you watch him for a little bit and you're like, oh my god, this guy is going to be like a starter in the NFL, and then he doesn't do anything for a couple games. He's the next guy up off the bench for the defensive line, so he's really involved in that rotation.
All right, Justice. I have to ask. I'm a big Corey Valentine fan. All right. Giants drafted him in the 6th round. I know his story, the whole thing about getting shot the night of the night he went out to celebrate being drafted, losing his best friend in that shooting. For whatever reason, the Giants let him go after, I think the beginning of his 2nd season, somewhere around there. Bounced around a little bit, seems to be finding some success in Green Bay. I'm a big fan. I love to see the fact that he's getting an opportunity, but you got to come clean. That was pass interference all day long the other night against Kansas City. Come on, you got to come clean. That was pass interference
It
all
was
day
pass
long.
interference. It was pass interference. They're never going to call it on the Hail Mary, so I'm okay with that one not being called.
Right.
But the MVS play, hilarious. I cannot believe that didn't get called. That was absolutely a makeup call for the phantom unnecessary roughness on Patrick Mahomes, or missing the forward progress on MVS earlier that drive. But it looks incredibly goofy that they did not throw that flag.
Yeah, yeah. I just I had to put it out there and see if you'd come clean.
Oh, hey, I got eyes. We all saw it.
Yeah.
How am I going to lie about that one?
But you're not gonna give it back either, and of
Yeah, no,
course.
hell no.
It's, no, those things, it's NFL officiating, and what goes around comes around, and those things always wind up in some way, shape, or form, they always wind up going both ways at some point.
Yep. Hey, the refs said that they made all the right decisions after the game. So in the little press pool. So
Mhm. Of course that's what they said.
I don't understand why we even have those pools if they're just going to stand by their calls every single time. I
I
don't
don't
get it.
know. Well, the theory is good, but we hardly ever get honest answers from coaches, so we're not going to get a heck of a lot from officials either. I wonder what's going to happen with officiating long term. I mean, there's so much money involved in the game now, and so much betting, and the league is is
Yeah.
involved in the betting aspect now, and it just makes me wonder what's going to happen with officiating long term.
Yeah, I don't know, and I know people have said, make them full timers. Outside of the NFL season, there's not really reps that you can get, right? So, I mean, are we just
No,
paying more for the same stuff, or I don't know,
no,
maybe make them full time and send them to the spring leagues, I guess, or
maybe. I
I
mean,
don't
I
know,
know that
send them to
I
spring practices and for college football or something. I don't know.
I know that a lot of times in the spring and the summer, like if I go to Giants practices in the spring or go to training camp practices, there's officials there.
Yeah,
But I don't think they're the actual NFL officials. I think they're a lot of times I think they're like local college officials or local high
yeah,
school officials. And maybe they could bring those guys in there sometimes and get them reps or whatever, but or maybe they could just make the rules a little simpler. but
a little
but
bit.
yeah, but I don't know. The NFL has the most convoluted rule book on the planet. I have my One of my sons used to referee soccer, and there's like there's like 6 rules. There's like 6 rules to referee in soccer.
It's
The
like
ball
no
goes out of
hands.
bounds, no hand, and if you kill the other guy, it's a penalty. You know, that's about it. In the NFL, there's a convoluted rule for everything. Anyway, Justice, we have to make a prediction here. We This part of the show is sponsored by SB Nation partner DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY. or text Hope NY, which is 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling by calling 888-789-7777 or visiting ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensee partner Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, Louisiana. 21 and over, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. That is a mouthful, but it leads us to prediction time. And I'm going to be honest, I'm going to go first here, and I'm just going to say there's not a chance that I can justifiably, reasonably pick the Giants to win this game. Giants have won 2 in a row. Tommy DeVito's a great story. All that, guys are naming sandwiches after the guy, and everybody wants a piece of the guy because he's such a great story. Local high school kid out of New Jersey, suddenly, out of nowhere becomes the Giants quarterback. But the Giants are 4-8. Green Bay has a lot to play for. I can't pick the Giants to win this game. I don't know if anybody on my staff is actually doing it. I'm sure that one or two folks are homerish enough to pick the Giants to win this game. But I can't do it. I think some of the Tommy DeVito mania might come to an end on Monday night. But I want to ask for your pick, and I want to ask you also if there is to be a Giants upset, if there is a path for the Giants to win this game, what is it?
So I am going to pick the Packers, unsurprisingly.
Of course.
If the Giants win, I think you start seeing some of those inconsistencies that the Packers had early on in the season show back up, right? If you watch, Jordan Love double clutch a ball and there's two guys in the same spot, and you're like, what? Why? How is the spacing in the offense? That doesn't make sense. It's because someone blew a route or something like that. Like it would have to be something like that, or the offensive line just getting like manhandled in terms of the protection game. So like I don't know, Dexter going, doing really well, or Kayvon Thibodeau or something like that, right?
Right.
On the other side, the thing that really kills Green Bay is if you could go inside run on them. Just the structure of the defense, that's like the thing that they're willing to concede. They'll play the edges pretty tough. They'll play split high safeties, play the corners off, and just make you earn it in terms of the passing game. But if you want to do the Pittsburgh Steelers thing where you want to rack up 200 yards because you have Kenny Pickett at quarterback, they'll just kind of let you do it. And if that happens, yeah, look out, Green Bay. Like they don't really adjust from there. Like that's always kind of been the thing
No.
with Joe Barry. The question I have is, so I know DeVito is going to start, right? And I know Tyrod seemed to feel some type of way about that. Is there any chance DeVito gets benched in this game for Tyrod? Do you think that's on the table at all, depending on how he looks? I know he's statistically had a pretty good, performance the past two games. I know he has like a passer rating of 100, but then you look at the QBR, and the QBR for his entire season is something like 11 on like a 100-point scale. So is a lot of that production not as impressive as the actual, what you guys are seeing with your eyes?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if it's on the table Monday night.
Okay.
I don't know if yanking him out of the lineup on Monday night is on the table. I think Tyrod Taylor has a lot of support in the Giants locker room. It was interesting because we had a Zoom call with some of the players the other day, and we got a chance to talk to Andrew Thomas and Darius Slayton, and neither one of those guys was going to say, I want DeVito to start or I want Taylor to start. But when we asked them about the quarterback situation, the first thing both of them mentioned is the fact that Tyrod Taylor's a 13-year veteran. He's much more advanced in his knowledge of, of NFL defenses and situations, and he's seen a whole lot more than Tommy DeVito. I think the Giants will play hard for either guy, but I do think there's a lot of players in that locker room who I mean, if you injected them with truth serum, they might tell you that they think Tyrod Taylor's a better quarterback
Yeah.
because at this point he probably is. But it's understandable that you go with Tommy DeVito after the last 2 weeks. After, you're 2-8, this kid comes out of nowhere. You may not have played great football, but he's been a lot of fun. He's brought a lot of energy. You've won 2 football games. You're at home on Monday Night Football. And it's understandable, I think, that they stay with DeVito, but I certainly think that at some point in time, if 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 it starts to go sideways, I certainly think Tyrod Taylor could be brought back into the lineup. I don't know if that happens on Monday night, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tyrod Taylor gets to play some football for the Giants this year. The thing about Tommy DeVito, for me, Tommy DeVito, as I said, has played with a lot of energy. He has made a lot of good throws. He has been very good when he's been able to hit his back foot, when the play that the Giants designed has been there, when the first read has been there, when Jalen Hyatt beats his man down the field, or whatever the first read is, whatever the option on the play that the Giants call is there. He's been able to deliver that ball. Where it's gone sideways for DeVito is when that first read isn't there. I'm not sure that he knows what to do because he's taken a lot of sacks, he's taken a lot of hits, and the Giants' offensive line over the last few weeks, it's been bad most of the year, and everybody knows it's been bad, but it hasn't been as bad the last few weeks, I think, as some of the numbers might make it look. Because I think that some of what's happening is Tommy DeVito not getting rid of the football. Tommy DeVito not knowing what to do if his first read is covered. Sort of just standing in the pocket and not knowing where to go or not getting rid of the ball. So for me, there's pluses and minuses. I'm interested. I think it's a great question. I think it's a tough spot for Brian Daboll too, because
Yeah.
you don't want to lose the locker room either. Let me ask you, despite the Giants' last 2 wins, from a Green Bay perspective, would you rather see DeVito or would you rather see Taylor?
I think I'd rather see DeVito. Um, I think I'd worry a little bit more about Taylor just because of, what you mentioned, the veteran presence, all that stuff, and how much he's seen and all that. So I, I've just seen Taylor has something like 55 starts at the NFL level. DeVito's got like 5, and he
Mhm.
played, poorly in the first 2. So
Yeah.
um yeah, I definitely would rather see DeVito than a veteran under center. That's
I
why I was
do.
asking, 'cause
Yeah.
it seemed odd to me that they decided to continue with DeVito, and maybe that's because, Tyrod just came back from the ribs injury or whatever.
Well,
I understand, wanting him to get, ramped up to get ready to get hit again, right? Or something like that. Um, but my whole question was really just based in like, okay, so they're obviously riding with a hot hand right now, right?
mhm.
But what
Yep.
happens when that hand is no longer hot? Like, what if
I
it
wouldn't be
looks bad
I
before
wouldn't be
halftime?
surprised at all if they go back to Tyrod Taylor. I mean, Tyrod Taylor, Tyrod's story in the
Yeah.
NFL. He's he's been replaced a number of times, and some of those situations were not fair to him. I think this is another one. The only thing Tyrod Taylor did wrong for the New York Giants this year is break 4 ribs.
Right.
That's the only thing he did wrong, is break 4 ribs trying to help them beat the New York Jets, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel bad for the guy. I do think there's a possibility the Giants would go back to Tyrod Taylor at some point. We'll have to see how it goes. Here in the New York, New Jersey area, we always we compare this whole thing going on with Tommy DeVito to what happened with Jeremy Lin of the Knicks a few years ago. The whole thing that we called Linsanity when he sort of came out of nowhere. And that wave eventually ends. I think maybe the Giants are looking at it and trying to say, well, we use this guy as our QB2 next year? Can we use this
Yeah.
guy, as maybe that's what they're doing is seeing if this is real, and maybe just riding it as long as it lasts. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, I do think the Giants are in for a little bit of a rude awakening on Monday night. Besides, I don't know, it might have been 20 or 30 years ago the last time the Giants played a good game on Monday Night Football on national TV. They seem to have gotten embarrassed every time they've played on national TV this year. So uh, I'm not sure Giants fans are happy to see them on Monday Night Football, but we'll see how the game goes. Anyway, Justice, I appreciate it, folks. Check out Acme Packing Company if you want the Packers' perspective on Monday night's proceedings. So, Giants fans, thank you as always for listening. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.